The King James Bible uses the term with child 26 times across both Old and New Testament to describe a woman who is in modern terms pregnant, which isn't a biblical word, by the way. Why did God see fit to describe a woman who hasn't yet given birth as being with child instead of with fetus or with non-living cells? I never said they're non-living, so stop putting words in my mouth. I said it doesn't have the breath of God in it yet. That is when it becomes a living life. The concept of an unborn child not being a human life is unbiblical. Then why does it say in the Old Testament, Exodus 21:22 through 25, if a pregnant woman is injured and loses her child as a result, but there is no further harm to her, the person responsible must pay a fine. However, if the woman herself is seriously injured or killed, then the law of life for life applies, but only one life, meaning the penalty is much more because of she was harmed. Jewish and Christian interpretations of this passage have concluded that the unborn child is not given the same legal status as a fully born person in this context. The destruction of the fetus is treated as a serious loss requiring compensation, but is not considered murder under biblical law. Only the death of the woman is treated as a homicide requiring life for life. I mean, that's literally God in the Old Testament. So, I mean, you know what? If you want to stay in your ego about this issue and you want to disregard how important it was to God that you knew that everything around you was given life because of his breath, then do it. Then stay in your ego. And your side's already gotten what it wants. They've changed the definition of when life begins. So you have what you want, conception. If you don't like me calling it cells, too bad. Too bad. Is the cells going to stay that way? Is it a human life that can walk? Is it a human living creature that can walk around? And no, it's in stages of development, which, by the way, with child means pregnant. In Hebrew, it means pregnant, which is the state of carrying a developing embryo or fetus within the body, typically referring to a woman or female animal. So it's in stages of development. I never said the cells aren't alive. I said you don't know because miscarriages do happen, just like in Exodus. You know, somebody's harmed and and throughout history, that's, there's spontaneous abortions, there's miscarriages. So all I said is that while those cells are going to go on and be developed, you don't know if it will go on to be completed and born, in which case then God gives it the breath of him and it becomes a living human life. Before that, it is in stages of development. But disregard everything that God's word says everywhere. Go ahead. Obviously this issue is just too important to you guys. Job declares the Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. Breath of the Almighty gives me life. So made and life are two different things. The Creator made, but it was his breath that gave it life. I don't know why this is so hard. The Creator formed you, but with his breath, he makes it become a living creature. What? And then for the argument that you had given me last night about the atom, and I replied back to you about, no, Adam just proves that the chicken came before the egg. That's what that proves. Because literally when the process is still today, when a baby is born, that breath goes into its nostrils. And I said that an OB said this, an OB that delivers babies said that that's what happens. That's why they cry out, is because their nostrils burn from the massive amount of oxygen hitting their nose. And yet God says in Genesis 2:7, I blow breath into your nostrils and you become a living creature. And what happens when that baby gets all of that oxygen into its burning and it burns its nostrils? It cries out, living creature. So to say that, oh, Adam was a separate case, no, it wasn't. I showed you in Romans and a couple other places. No, it literally says in the New Testament we're all descendants of Adam and Eve. So all it shows with Adam and Eve is that the argument of life, what was the first life, the egg or the chicken or the egg? Well, it was the chicken that came first. The difference with Adam was he was an adult male. But a baby is still, he still had the form of a child. He wasn't cells. This is ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But when God doesn't even see it as, in the Old Testament, he's creating the law, telling them what to do. And yet is literally saying if a pregnant woman is injured and loses her child as a result, but there is no further harm to her, the person responsible must pay a fine. So he doesn't see it as a life then yet, does he? I would imagine he sees it as in stages of development. Because my opinion, okay, just my opinion, because it's all over his word about made and breath being what gives life, that I think that it was really like the biggest thing he wanted us to know was that it is his breath that gives us all life, because that's why we should always, realize that with every breath we take, it's God. But you guys have minimized it to cells now. And you would say, oh, how could you say that? It's a human life. Okay, well, if it was literally a human life that can walk and talk and do, then it wouldn't be in the womb, would it? It's in stages of development. It's in stages of development so that then when it's born and it has nostrils and God can blow the oxygen concentration into it and it screams out and becomes a living creature. So I'm not going to keep going back and forth. You guys are too in your ego about this. I think that it clearly shows everywhere that breath, God made it abundantly clear that he expected you to understand what murder was. And in order to understand what murder was, you definitely needed to understand what life is. And in order for it to be a living being, it had to have the breath of him in it. And when it is in the womb, it has not been developed yet enough for him to do that. It's once it comes into the world. And with child just means pregnant. He says fruit of the womb too. But again, I never said it's dead cells. I said it's not a human life yet. Is it a human? Is it in development to become a human? Yes. The cells are human, but it is not a human life yet because it has to receive God's breath. I'm just done. I'm just done with it again. Okay? Literally, when making the law in the Old Testament, if a pregnant woman is injured and loses her child as a result, but there is no further harm to her, so she's lost her child. Okay, so you guys would be saying murder, right? The person responsible must pay a fine. However, if the woman herself is seriously injured, then the law is that a life needs to be taken because she was injured. And Jewish and Christian interpretations of this passage conclude that the unborn child is not given the same legal status as a fully born person in this context. Why? Well, why? It's simple, because it's not been given the breath of life. When God tells you everywhere else all over the Bible that his literal breath is what brings you to life, it was that important for him. That's how important he wanted Christians to know that. Okay? Then I think that it's safe to say that he realizes it's in development there. And by the way, do people not consider, like, slavery is all through the Bible, right? Do you think that he didn't account for the fact that there would be women that were trafficked, forced to have abortions, or want to have abortions because they're raped 50 times a day? Yeah, he considered all of it. So maybe use some discernment.